Welcome to Fly on the Wall podcast. I'm your host, Chris Sonksen, CEO and founder of Church Boom. Here you get to sit in on a live coaching session as I coach pastors through the ministry challenges we all face. If you find this podcast helpful, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share. Hey everyone, welcome to today's podcast. Before we jump into it, just want to remind you that here at Church Boom, we are a ministry, an organization that coach pastors and rescue churches. And if you need some help in any way, just visit churchboom.org. We're always here to help. And today I am so excited. I have my good friend, Pastor Eddie from New York on this podcast today. We have an incredible conversation. Love diving into it with him on how do you structure your church and your staff for growth. It's a great conversation. Let's jump into it. How can I serve you? What's on your mind?
Okay, well, basically, I'm approaching it from a 500, trying to break 500. We were already hitting up against it on COVID, before COVID hit. We were meeting in a big school, big auditorium. We had all the space we needed, and we were bumping up against 500. Now, currently, we're about at 300 with children, about 350. That's where we're at right now. And we have a lot of young people. Our church is 50-50. About half are married, half are single, which reflects New York. Mm-hmm. And a lot of young people. I would say our average member is about young 20s, 20, 25 years old. So based on that backdrop of trying to break where I was, my first question would be this. On a previous podcast, you mentioned that, quote, you said, if they're volunteer directors of ministries versus staff, you were speaking that. So in a church where I'm at, what is your picture of a staff? I mean, and what should be my picture of a staff? When you say staff, are these just full-time people? Are they people that just do reports, financials, admin, stuff like that? Are they considered staff if they're full-time?
That's a great question. I don't think that my personal opinion is, and the way that I've always operated is, I don't let money determine their position. I let their influence and ability determine their position. So, hey, this person is full-time and gets X amount of dollars. Okay, they're full-time staff. Okay, I guess that would be true. They are full-time staff. But do they have to be getting paid to be staff? My answer is no. I have a guy that I'm doing we do a lot of executive coaching, and I'm doing executive coaching for this guy. One of his campus pastors that's doing really well isn't paid at all. But the guy owns all these businesses. He doesn't need the money. I mean, whatever he would pay him wouldn't make any difference in his life. So just because he doesn't need the money because he owns a ton of businesses and he's the campus pastor at a campus, we're not going to call him staff just because he doesn't get a check. That to me wouldn't make any sense. I think it is about the position that they hold, the influence they hold, where they're at. So, and I look at major departments. I look at youth, children, small groups, worship, assimilation. Those are the kind of things that I would look at, whether they're paid or not. It matters really what they're doing and the impact that they're having. And as you grow, one thing for sure, Eddie, is as you grow, the structure has to change. So right now it's probably Eddie, and I'm just, youth, worship, pastor, director, whatever, children's director, assimilation, small groups, men's, women's, I don't know. Maybe there's 7 or 8 of you, 9 of you, whatever. I have no idea. But it's you and them. And then eventually that structure changes as you get bigger. So it's like, okay, now I need 3 people that work with me really close. And they become an executive team, and then I have the staff. Or they become a DLT, directional leadership team. And then we have the rest of the staff. I'm not saying it's changing today, but as you grow, structure has to change. So
Yeah.
Does that make sense? It can't be the same as you grow.
It makes total sense. And I guess that's what I'm trying to articulate that in my mind.
Yeah.
What, I know things need to change, the structure needs to change,
Yeah.
you know, but for example, this would lead me to my next question.
Yeah.
Uh, Historically, I've communicated and mobilized through small groups. I consider ourselves a church of small groups.
Okay.
We've had effective small groups for many years. And, but what does communication look like? I mean, I'm not talking about social media or secondary means of communication or even the services,
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
that's a small window.
Right.
But how do you communicate? Like when we were portable, they would throw me out of a school last minute. So
Yeah.
I had like sections of leaders over small groups, and with one text, I was able to communicate to my core.
Yeah.
So how does that look like in a bigger church? You with all these campuses, what
Yeah.
communication? How does it happen?
Yeah. Well, you're talking specifically, or it sounds like you're talking about internal communication. We're not talking about the church. Just want to make sure I'm clear. Are we talking about? We're not talking about the church. We're talking about more staff, key leaders, key volunteers. Is that what we're talking about? Or are we talking about the church as a whole?
We're talking about the church as a whole,
Oh, the church as a whole. Okay.
like,
Yeah.
like the envisioning, the mobilization.
Yeah.
Like how do you mobilize? When your structure's beyond 500.
Yeah, sure. No, completely. You're going to be relying a lot on, as you grow, you rely a lot on the key leaders, key volunteers, key leaders, and your staff. They've got to be carrying the same DNA and the same strength of passion that you have. And so, I mean, I'm not talking about making an announcement, but hey, even bigger than that, this is where the church is going. Here's what's happening next month. Here's why this is so important. Here's why we're having a Vision Sunday. That's got to come from you. But as you get down into the weeds, the passion and the heart, the passion, the culture, the drive, it's gotta be carried out at the same level or close to when you're talking about key leaders, key volunteers, and key staff. I always say culture is great at the top, sport at the bottom, but it's lost in the middle. And it gets lost in the middle with key leaders that don't communicate the same passion. It's Vision Sunday, the same strength, the same urgency, the same priority. Passion, Eddie, has a way of getting diluted as it cascades down from the top. And part of your job, or a big part of your job, is always making sure that they are sharing it and that they're holding it at the same level. So on one of the podcasts, I talked about that culture has 4 levels. Is that the bottom level is you embrace, you defend, you multiply. And most churches live at know and embrace. So it's like, yeah, my team knows what we're about, and they embrace it. They're not against it. They embrace it. But to say that they defend it and multiply it, I don't know if that's necessarily true for a lot of churches. So think about it for a moment. You've got key leaders, key volunteers, key staff, whatever. They probably know what you're about. They probably embrace what you're about. They're not against it. But could we say that all of them defend it and they multiply it just as much as you multiply it? That's going to be the key, because they're going to have to be carrying that out. They're going to have to be the ones that are helping that. It's kind of like the tribes in the Old Testament. It's like there's a communication, and then it goes down to the tribes, and the tribe leaders had to speak. All these different tribes that were tribe of Benjamin, all the different tribes. There were these leaders that were communicating. And if you study it, it's kind of an interesting fascination, because there was this idea of how things were going to get communicated. And I think it's the same thing with you. It's we have to say, okay, if I'm at the top, and yeah, I'm the voice, and I got to do Vision Sundays, and I got to do all that. But if when you get down a level lower, and they know it and they embrace it, but they don't defend it, or multiply it, then I'm a recipient. Now I'm pretending I'm an usher or a greeter at your church, and your head greeter, your head assimilation person, whatever that's kind of over me or whatever, kind of comes to me and says, we're doing this Sunday thing, and pastor says it's important. To me, I'm like, doesn't sound very important, versus, hey, there's this thing going on, man. We want everybody to be there because it's so important. I mean, we're excited about the future. Now I'm like, oh, this sounds pretty important. It's those conversations as they go down that become really, really important, because the culture and passion are going to get diluted as it goes down if you're not careful. So making sure your key leaders and key volunteers and key staff are presenting things with the same passion, urgency, and culture that you're wanting it presented, that's how it gets handled. That's how it gets resolved.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm interpreting is that communication is more than words.
Well, it is, but yeah, they've got to have the word, they got to have the heart behind it, and that comes back down to the responsibility of you. Do the people that next level below you, whatever you want to call it, do those people, do they know your heart? Are they in? Excuse me, they know your heart. They're in. They're like, man, we're all in, and we get it, and we have that passion, and that's really up to you to be able to. Excuse me, it'd be up to communicate that and for them to gain that passion. And I think that's when a leader has to look back and go, okay, I can't just be frustrated at this tier 2 group. I call it tier 2, whatever, leaders, volunteers, key staff. I got to look at me. Then I got to say, what is the disconnect? Because the burden of communication is always on the communicator. So where's the disconnect? What am I not saying? What am I not conveying? And what am I not bringing to their attention? Where am I losing passion as a leader? Where is my clarity lacking? I think those things are so important.
Right. So then in redefining this team that you gather with, this top team,
yeah,
how often, not just for vision casting, but to keep them in the loop, to keep the why before them, how often do you meet with them? Because that's been one of my challenges here, that I'm in a city that's very, everybody's moving from point A to point B.
Yeah.
They get out of work at 5 p.m. and then they're on the subway for, an hour. That's reality here.
Yeah.
A lot of the people don't have vehicles. They don't need them here.
Yeah.
They're on the subways.
Yep.
So when you have a very limited time with people that are key, but yet at the same time they're key, but they're not as available.
Yep.
Even through Zoom. I'm talking about just time, overall.
Yep.
What do you do in a context like that?
No, I think it's great that you have that observation and reality that, hey, you got to call it what it is. In LA, I live in Southern California. It's not that they're in the subway. They're just on the freeway for 2.5 hours. So subway or freeway, they're still taking forever to get home. They don't even get home till 7 o'clock, and then they got to turn around and do it again the next day. Now they're in cars, excuse me, but that's irrelevant. The fact is that they're not, they're in transportation mode from 5 to 7. So that becomes a challenge. I think that one, let's talk about your staff. If they're getting paid part-time, whatever, I think to figure out a time where you guys can connect on a regular basis. If it was key staff members and they were getting paid, I'd want to meet with them weekly for sure. If they're more stipend level in a bigger group, so you maybe you call it kind of your department, maybe it's staff, and then maybe it's department leads, kind of different title. This is staff, and then we're having staff and department leads, or however you want to do that. I think Sundays after church might be your best bet since they're already there. And then I would look at all volunteers and everything. I think I would look at all volunteers, all leaders. I would probably look at a quarterly thing every 3 to 4 months with all volunteers, all leaders, your dream team, whatever you want to call it. So divide it between, I got these paid staff, then I got staff in all departments. Okay, now they meet differently. They meet once a month, so it's like weekly, monthly, quarterly. is the thing that I would try to do in a situation where they are very, on subways and things like that. I think that, to me, it never matters when you meet, just a matter of the fact that you do have to meet. You got to connect. And maybe Sundays is your best bet. I don't know. You know your culture and you know your region and area better than I would, for sure. But you have to meet. But if they're there on Sunday and you're able to provide some childcare and throw out some pizza and have a 1-hour meeting, that might work for a lot of people. It's like, well, my kid's getting fed. I'm getting fed. We're already here anyway. So let's just stay an extra hour. It's the way that I would probably take it. I know that in downtown LA, we have a campus and a lot of stuff happens Sunday after church, because try to pull it off on a Monday night, it's just not going to happen.
Right.
Yeah. So I get that. I get it. It's kind of the same thing ish. It's somewhat the same thing when you get in downtown LA. It's not like New York. It's very different, but the time frames are the same. They still struggle with, all the other stuff. So having Monday night meetings is just not going to happen.
Yeah, and then sometimes you get them, but they're like they're at the end.
They're exhausted.
They're just
Exactly. Yep, for sure. That's good. It's good observation. So that's the way I think I would look at it. But you do need to make sure that you're communicating with them regularly. Also, think about vision moments that you could do. Vision moments are maybe a 2-minute video on your phone that you could send out to people weekly. That they'll listen to that. They'll watch that on the subway. They'll watch that, coming home from work. It's just 2 minutes from you, 3 minutes from you. It's like, Mondays with Pastor Eddie or Friday with Pastor Eddie or something like that. And you do a little 2-minute thing. Hey guys, man. And what I would do in those things is I would do a quick celebration and whatever quick information they need to know. Hey guys, hope you're having a great week. Just want to let you know, man, this past week we saw 18 people give their life to Christ. Or hey, this past week I got to talk to a couple that was struggling, blah, blah, blah. Their life got turned around. You know why that's happened? Because of you. Thank you for what you do. You guys are amazing. We couldn't do these amazing stories without you. And then also just want to remind you that we're all right, man, let's keep driving. Let's keep making a difference. I love you guys, praying for you, always here for you. At least there's this constant communication coming from you. People are more likely to quickly watch that video than read an email. So that might be one thing that you do. It's a quick it's a quick video of you, and it's not professional. It's just you hold up your phone and you talk, and do 2 minutes and send it out to everybody in a group setting. It's however, maybe that's to staff, maybe that's to key leaders, maybe you do it separately. I don't know, but that's another way to communicate, and at least you're dripping vision and you're dripping celebration, because that's an important thing. They got to know why they're volunteering, working, helping, being a staff member. Those stories matter. And so when you're telling those stories quickly, once a week on a video, and then you can get creative. If it's maybe someone comes sees you in your office and new volunteers signed up, couple, maybe you're just like, hey, I'm sitting here with Tom and Linda, and they just signed up. Tom, Linda, how long have you been going to the church? Oh, we've been coming here for about a year. Man, our life got turned around, and now we're volunteering, and man, we thought we were going to do a divorce, and now we're not, and praise God. And then you back to yourself, and you're like, guys, I just wanted you to hear that story real quick, man. If you see them, high five them. This is why we do what we do. Man, I'm telling you, bro, that will keep vision alive. Vision is told through stories. It's not just stated values on a wall. It's stories that support the values on the wall.
Right.
So the stories are important, and you can do those.
You can do those. That's very enlightening, that vision moments. I like that.
Do a vision moment. So in a vision moment, it can change it all the time. Celebration's a big one. Quick story. Celebration, a little bit of insight. Hey, don't forget this, that, and the other thing. Or, hey, man, just a reminder, 2 of our values are blank and blank. Let's be that this week at work, and let's be that in our life, whatever. And 2 minutes, 100 seconds with Pastor Eddie. Come up with a little creative name and just make it quick and to the point. They'll watch it.
Right.
I mean, they'll watch it. Sent to their phone, they'll watch it. So,
Wow.
so I would definitely have your regular meetings, but then I would have vision moments that are convenient.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. What else you got?
Okay. Another question here again is, you speak about the corporate average, right? Like
Yep.
the people right next to you. So in a context where a lot of your people are either not natural leaders or capacity, I'm talking about just capacity, where you realize that just the capacity, they have a lot of heart,
Yeah.
but the capacity, what is a tip in a context like that, like
Yeah.
where you're leading people that naturally want to be led?
Yeah.
They
Sure.
they don't want to lead.
No, I get it. A couple thoughts that I would say to that, and I've been in that context before, and I've worked with a lot of guys in that context. Capacity is just not there. Their trajectory of that is not there. But with that said, when I talk about corporate average, now one thing is for sure, when I talk about corporate average, I'm not talking about 28 people. I'm talking about 3. 3 or 4 people that are closest to you. Your need, Eddie, you're a great leader. You're doing a great work. But your need to have 3 people next to you. Now, I'm not talking about your wife. I'm talking about 3, and obviously your wife, but 3 people that are not related to you in that way, but are, man, my executive pastor, my associate pastor, or 3 associate pastors, my DLT, my lead team, whatever you want to call it. Those 3 people, the higher the level, 1, you want to get the highest level people around you, and then 2, you want to help grow them in their level. So if they come in as a 6, can we get them to an 8? Now, I understand, hey, I got 300 people, 300 adults in my church, but I got to believe there's 3 or 4 that you could bring in close to you. So when I say corporate average, isn't corporate average with you and 28 people. It's corporate average between you and 3 people.
Okay.
And then now you've got, let's say that your team is 7s and 8s. I got 4 people, 3 people, Pastor Eddie, and I got 3 people next to me, and we're all 7s and 8s or whatever. Okay, now how do we work with the people below us that are only 3s and 4s? Can we get them to a 5? How are we going to get them to a 5? I got to believe that there are, I think, regardless of the area of the United States or anywhere in the world, there's just natural leaders and people that are maybe not as natural in their leadership. You got to find them and you got to get them on your team. That team of 3 or 4, they got to be developing leaders. So you're developing the 3 or 4, and then those 3 or 4 are developing people up, but they have to have a plan. Developing isn't just, okay, you're now in charge of the 9 o'clock usher department. Okay, go ush, or whatever you say. It's like, well, that's not. It's like, what are these guys? Are they going to take them through a book? Are we going to sit and go through a book? I don't know. How are we going to develop these guys? There's got to be. That's why we talk about it on Church Boom University. There's the leadership ladder. So it's always like you can learn about the leadership ladder. I think your guys need to be bringing people up to that next level. So look at your top 3 or 4, get them to be 7s or 8s, and then get them to work with other people and start bringing them up. Your ability to get to 5 to 7 to 8 will highly be dependent on the level of leadership you can bring people up to. Because every church grows to the level of the pastor's personality. And then after that, it has to change. Because once you get past personality, now it comes to 2 other things: personnel and processes, strategy. It changes. So it's like, man, Eddie's a great guy. People love him. He can get the church to 200 to 300. People love that guy, whatever, whoever the pastor is. But at some point, it's like, this is going to happen. Every time it does. So then I'm saying, okay, now you did all you could with your personality. Now let's look at personnel. I'm not talking about paid people, just like what I mean by that is just like staff members, key leaders, the 3 or 4 around you, your people closest to you. Are we raising up other leaders? Are new leaders coming up? It will come down to that ability of who do we have that's growing in the personnel, like leaders, volunteer leaders, all that, like who's coming up? And then processes. Okay, that's all of our systems and our strategy. What do we do with first-time guests? How quickly are we engaging people? Those 2 things will dictate past personality. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You will grow to the level of the pastor's personality. Every church does. And some of that will be 50, some of that will be a few hundred. But if you're going to grow to the 5, to the 7, to the 1,000, it's going to go way past a one man's personality. It's going to go into much greater things. Everything's got to change. Right, that's why pastors get stuck, bro, is because it's like, dude, I get this thing to 150 and I can't seem to break it. And I'm like, because you're doing the same thing. You're relying on your personality. You have natural energy. People like you. You're contagious. You're passionate. You're gravitational. You're attractional to 150 or to 200 or to whatever the number is. But then after, or maybe you got a couple of little leaders in place, but at some point, this is going to happen. And then you go to personnel, your people on your team, not paid people, just people on your team. Are they raising up leaders? Do we have true leaders? Are we intentional about raising leaders? And then we got to start questioning all our strategies and systems. Are we getting people from point A to point B? Are we able to get people from point A to point B? All that stuff. Like how do we engage people? How do we follow up first-time guests? How are we growing volunteer teams? Like that's all your strategy and your systems over here. So personnel and processes, all that changes.
Right. Because so you would say, you previously recommended me, which I got into that book, The Who Before the What.
Before How?
How.
Who Before How, yeah. That's right.
But would you say from personality, personnel, and processes, are they in that order of importance? Or
I would
processes and personnel align?
Yeah, I would start working on... I think that personality comes natural. We're going to do that no matter what. There's no order to that. But when you start looking at personnel and processes, I think they go hand in hand. Well, I've got all these leaders, but man, our processes stink. We don't follow up with people. We don't engage people quickly. We don't have this what I call the speed of engagement. Or, man, we got the speed of engagement. We got this, but man, we don't have any leaders that are leading this. So it's like we're building this thing over here with no leaders. Or we got all these leaders, but we don't have this thing we've built. And that's why another way of looking at it, and that's another way of saying it is it's like a train. I don't know if you've heard me use this analogy before, but I've been to Japan and I've been on the bullet train and it goes 300 miles an hour. It's crazy. But if you take that 300-mile-an-hour bullet train in Tokyo, Japan, and pick it up and take it to Texas and put it on some old Western train track built in 1870, it's not going to go 300 miles an hour. Think about it for a minute. The train can go 300 miles an hour. It's got the engine to go 300 miles an hour. It was built to go 300 miles an hour, but it won't because the track won't allow it. Now let's move that to church. The size and speed of your church will always be determined by its structure and its strategy. So, hey, I want to go 300 miles an hour. Pastor Eddie says, I want to go 300 miles an hour. I know you do. But the tracks that you're on, it won't allow it. So you got to change everything. You got to change, I got to change personnel, how we're developing leaders. That's structure. And then I got to think about the processes. That's strategy. I got to think about all that. Like, are we raising up leaders? Are we developing leaders? Do we have high-level leaders? Are we intentional about it? Are we just leaving it to chance? And then what about our strategy? So the size of your church, the speed of your church will be determined by its structure and its strategy. It wants to go 300 miles an hour, but it won't on the wrong tracks.
Right. Wow.
So then that has to change.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Totally.
Well, man, hey, I see our time is coming to an end. I got to jump, but man, it is awesome to be able to talk with you. I'm so proud of everything you're doing there in Brooklyn, New York. And man, God's doing awesome things in you, man. It really is awesome. But
thank you. And next time you're around here, let's go see a game.
Oh yeah, come on, we'll go and just yell. You got to yell with that thick New York accent. That way it comes across authentic. I appreciate you, buddy. Good to see you, man.
All right, take care, Chris.
Have an awesome day. Thank you for tuning in to the Fly on the Wall podcast. We hope today's episode provided you with some practical steps to lead your church to the next level. If you found this episode helpful, take a moment to leave us a review and share it with others. Remember, when the pastor grows, the church grows, and we grow pastors. We love you. We're your raving fans, and we are cheering you on. See you next week.